The most unique uses of sound and music in video games in North America by Ryan and Eric.
Video games have played an important role in many people's lives. From the very first game Pong in 1958 to the thousands of video game studios all across the world, the industry is constantly evolving. Much like films, video games are heavily influenced by the sound design and the music. Today, we will talk about a few of our favorite uses of sound and music in the video game industry in North America. Ori and the Blind Forest from Moon Studios has a soundtrack by Gareth Coker featuring a large orchestra, hour-and-a-half long arrangement that takes advantage of leitmotifs through the story's progression. These themes are generated from the main characters and change ever so slightly with different rhythmic meters, different scales, etc. The music also uses ludomusicology with interactive ambience changes based on which sections of the world your character is currently in.
Crypt of the Necrodancer is a genre-defying indie game from Canadian studio Brace Yourself Games. The game ingeniously combines two genres never before associated with each other, dungeon crawling and rhythm games. The gameplay is similar to that of a traditional dungeon crawler, but the twist is that the player can only perform actions on the beat of the soundtrack, making the gameplay reliant on the music. This means that they can adjust the difficulty of a level by playing a song with a slower or faster tempo. This unusual combination of genres makes Crypt of the Necrodancer one of the most innovative games of the decade.
Katana Zero by Devolver Digital is a retro-style video game about a time-warping veteran. The synthwave lo-fi music by Ludo Wick and Bill Kiley speaks for itself, but the music's ingenuity comes from the main character's time warp abilities affecting the soundtrack, and his descent into schizophrenic madness reflected onto the soundtrack through audio glitches and stutters.
Good evening, boys and girls, ladies, and gentlemen. Turn the lights down low and shut your faces as I wrap you in the cozy blanket of a story. A story as heartwarming and soft as a mother's kiss. Or is it? Shh.
Developed in 2013 by indie studio The Behemoth, Battleblock Theater is a comedic platformer that creatively explores the relationship between the narrative and the soundtrack. One of the game's key features is the presence of an eccentric narrator who is also a character in the story. He talks to the player throughout the entirety of the game and even makes comments about the gameplay. The most interesting part is when the narrator sometimes sings as part of the game's soundtrack, making the game a fun and unique exploration of diegesis only possible within the medium of video games.
The Civilization series by Firaxis Gamesys is a land-conquering simulator that features different nations of the world. The original soundtrack for the most recent Civilizations game is by Jeff Knorr, featuring 4+ hours of different nations and different eras in time, all having cultural context for their respective nations. For example, the Egyptian theme is heavily influenced by the famous Arabic song, Al-Helwadeya.
Competitive fighting games have always been known as reaction-heavy with a high execution requirement, thus leading to some inherent inaccessibility to disabled players. In order to address this issue, Microsoft Studios placed a huge effort into the sound design in order to allow blind and visually impaired players to play at a competitive level. Every single action in the game has a unique and distinctive sound associated with it, and with the help of stereo audio, visually impaired players can pinpoint exactly where those actions are taking place. Another major addition was adding sound effects for various HUD elements such as meter. Before this new feature, blind players had to simply guess when they had enough meter to perform specific actions.
This old-school style platformer uses art that is very reminiscent of early Disney and Fleischer Studios. The music featured in the game are all original works by Chris Madigan and Studio MDHR's Big Band Jazz. The music combined with the visual and some 1930s audio and visual filters create a unique effect that makes the game stand out.
There's clearly no shortage of creativity in the usage of sound in video games. We tried to pick examples that were unique and distinct from each other to show just how wide the possibilities are. And this video is limited to games just from North America. This outstanding display of creativity and innovation is truly inspiring.
Thank you for watching. The script and all sources used are in the description of the video.